people, welcome to Prep Elevate. Today we'll discuss a question on PARASUMMARY. These questions appeared in CAT 23, slot 3. Before we start with the PARASUMMARY questions, I would quickly like to reiterate the rules. They remain the same. We'll take a look at the passage, skim through the passage, find out what the keywords are. Are we able to understand the language? Does the language seem very familiar to us? Then we'll try and look at the options also. Are they too lengthy to comprehend? And then we'll try and understand the passage in depth. All right, we had the first question on the screen, and I would request all of you to first try the question on your own and then come back and have a look at the explanation. So we'll start with the usual exercise. I am just going to randomly try and understand what the keywords are. All right, so island birds is what I can see. I can see Antarctic prions. Although I may not know what all of these words mean, I am just trying to randomly pick up words. Birds return to breed, predatory, transform. Then I see some double quotes here, so probably there is some conversation here or somebody is putting forth their thoughts. I'll have to take a good look at it to understand that. Experience, fencing, fantastic, exciting. So far so good. It looks like something that I would like to go ahead and attempt because the words are familiar. This is just one of the ways of judging a passage. You might get a passage that is pretty simple to understand, but then you might get options which are complex, which are very close, very difficult to eliminate. So far I feel like this is a good passage. I would like to give it a try. So let me just read it in depth now. Gradually, life for the island birds is improving. Antarctic prions and white-headed petrels. Remember, we are looking at some words which I may not know the meaning of. All I know is probably from the first line, they are names of the island birds, right? I don't have to know what they actually mean. Which also nest in burrows, had managed to cling on in some sites while pests were on the island. So probably there was a time when on the island we had pests, and still these birds, these island birds, they managed to cling on in some sites. So they also found their shelter on the island, and while the pests were there, they managed to cling on to some sites. So probably that tells me that pests no longer exist on the island because we are talking about the past. We'll take a look at it to understand. Their numbers are now increasing. All right, so they are having a good life. Their life is improving, numbers are increasing. It's fantastic and so exciting, Shaw says. Okay, so probably Shaw is a person who is looking closely or monitoring the lives of these island birds, and he says that it's pretty exciting. As birds return to breed, they also poo. These add nutrients to the soil, which in turn helps the plants to grow back stronger. So we are talking about plant droppings. They help to add nutrients to the soil. Tall plants then help the burrowing birds hide from predatory skewers. All right, so the entire cycle is very similar to the water cycle, right? So you have plants, you have birds. Birds, they are increasing in number, they are breeding, and their droppings are helping the plants to grow. And these plants are again providing shelter to these birds. So their numbers are increasing. It's this wonderful feedback loop, right? So that is what we've gathered, Shaw says. Today, the pretty paddock that Houghton first experienced has been transformed. Okay, so there is some change, some transformation. The tussock is over your head and you are dodging all these penguin tunnel, she says. I may not know what all of this means. This might be part of a story that I have not even read. So I'll just stick to what I already know. The orchids and tiny herb that had been protected by fencing have started turning up all over the place. All right, so there's an increase in the number of birds, and we also know that orchids and tiny herbs, they are again increasing in number. So this is a fairly simple passage, and whenever you have lots of opinions and lots of people pitching in what they feel, it's something very similar to what a conversation would look like. So probably the language is familiar until and unless they are talking about something which is extremely scientific and beyond our understanding or comprehension. So I'll just take a look at the options now. there is an increasing number of predatory birds and plants on the island despite the presence of pests, which is a positive development. Remember, wild pests were on the island. We don't know if they exist on the island, right? So this is not a correct way of explaining the essence of the passage. Despite the presence of pests, I am not sure if pests are present on the island anymore. All I know is in the past they were present, and these island birds still managed to find some place for themselves. So I am eliminating this, right? Option B, in the absence of pests, life on the island is now protected, all right, and there has been a revival of a variety of birds and plants. Now remember, this option gives me a good link between what happened in the past and present. So now the life is protected and there has been a revival. This is what we were talking about. So life is improving on that island. This seems like a good choice. I'll put it on hold though. Always comparative analysis for parasummary. Option C, there is a huge positive transformation of the ecosystem of the island when brought under environmental protection. This is way too generic. This is way too generic. Huge positive transformation. Yes, there has been a transformation which has been positive in nature, but environmental protection, we don't know what comes under the ambit of environmental protection. We only know what the measures or what has happened on this particular island. So this is a very generic choice, all right? Option D, flowering plants, herbs and birds are now being protected on this wonderful Antarctic island. Do we know this is an Antarctic island? All I know is we had Antarctic prions and white-headed petrels. Does that mean this is an Antarctic island? May not be true. So I cannot confirm this. So this stands rejected, and always we had an option which summarized the essence better. So correct answer is option B. In the absence of pests, so pests no longer exist. Earlier they were a part of this ecosystem. Life has, life on this island is now protected. There has been a revival, all right. Life is improved of a variety of birds and plants. So both these species are mentioned here. This is how we come to the correct answer choice. Remember, parasummary always has to be a comparative analysis. All right, now we'll move to the next question. Okay, like always, I'll request all of you to first solve it on your own and then come back and have a look at the explanation. Process remains the same. Randomly, I'm just looking at words. Society, expectations, society, expectations, draining, recent decades, somewhere in between, mass culture, famous advertising images, obligation, idiosyncratic. Okay, so probably I'm going to get words here which are not very easy to read or go through. This tells me self-satirizing. All right, we do have difficult words. Chiseled, demure, graciousness for women. Okay, perfectionists. Okay, now this as a passage has quite a few difficult words. All right, but like I told you, we'll not just focus on words to understand if we should be attempting this passage. Although the difficult words are scattered around the passage, still a lot of these words seem familiar. Society's expectations and how they have become draining, probably the first line, advertisement, American family. This is totally your choice if you want to go ahead with such a passage or not. If I have to give you my take on this passage, I would definitely like to give it a chance, probably not towards the first half of my attempting the paper. So somewhere, after I have attempted all those questions that I'm very sure about, this would be, one of those questions that I would like to look at least towards the end, just to understand. All right, now let me read it out for you. The weight of society's expectations is hardly a new phenomenon, but it has become particularly draining over recent decades. So that tells me, there is some picture that has been painted, some contrast probably that I'll get to look at, because you have the past and you have the present. We may get to look at that contrast later. Perhaps because expectations themselves are so multifarious and contradictory. All right. So multifarious as a word means variety. It refers to variety. So the expectations have become so varied and so contradictory that it is creating a lot of pressure in today's time, the expectations of the society. The perfectionism of the 1950s was rooted in the norms of mass culture and captured in famous advertising images of the ideal white American family. So, this is an example of the same that now seems self satirizing. So, we are talking about the 1950s where being perfect had a different definition. It meant that you conform to the norms of the society. There was, it's written here as mass culture. You follow what the mass is following, and that is what perfection was defined as in the 1950s. So there was this very famous American dream that white American dream. So it seems self satirizing. What is the meaning of a satire? Satire is a humorous way of criticizing somebody. So yeah, you definitely criticize somebody, but you use humor as a tool. So basically, very close to when we say mockery, okay, mocking the society. So this definition now seems like a humorous way of criticism, right? In that era, perfectionism meant seamlessly conforming to value, right? So you conform to the standards of the society. You don't question, you just follow. Mass culture. So you conform to values, behavior, appearance. So in terms of appearance also, they've given a list. So chiseled confidence for men and demure graciousness for women. The perfectionist was under pressure to look like everyone else, only more so. So you do not stand out from the crowd, you actually become a part of the crowd. That is how perfectionism was defined, at least in the 1950s. Last line tells us what the contrast is. The perfectionists of today, by contrast, feel an obligation to stand out. So there, in the 90s, 50s, we were following the culture. There was mass culture. You had to follow what was being followed in the society. You conform to their standards, their values, appearance, everything. Now, in this era, if you have to, you have to be a perfectionist, there is pressure to stand out through their idiosyncratic style and wit if they are to gain a foothold. So, if you have to capture the attention of the society, the way today is to stand out. This as a word, idiosyncratic, okay? Idiosyncratic. This as a word means distinctive, right? When your style is unusual and it captures the attention of the audience, this means distinctive. So, all I know is although it has a lot of difficult words, but if I try to capture the essence of the society, there is a contrast between how societal expectations have changed over the years, how they have evolved or changed. So we compare the 1950s to today. Earlier, perfectionism meant that you conform to the ideals of the society. There was, something known as mass culture, and today if you have to be called a perfectionist, you have the pressure to stand out. So that is the difference, that is the contrast that I've understood. Now, option A, though long standing, the pressure to appear perfect and thereby attract attention has evolved over time from one of conformism to one of non-conformism. This is a very good way of capturing the essence of the passage. I really like this option, but then like I mentioned, parasummary is all about comparative analysis, so I'll still keep this on hold. Option B, the pressure to appear perfect has been the cause of tension and conflict. This was not mentioned. This was never mentioned in the passage that it was a cause of tension and conflict. So there was a pressure to be perfect, but it caused tension and it caused conflict. It was not mentioned, so this is little out of scope because the idea itself has been in a state of flux and hard to define. So this is rejected because the keywords were not mentioned. Option C, the desire to attract attention is so deep rooted in individual consciousness that people are willing to go to any lengths to achieve it. If you have noticed a pattern, you will realize in parasummary you always get an option which is a very generic way of putting forth a thought, and it is never the correct answer. It just seems logically correct, right? But here we have to capture facts and look at the option that best captures the themes of the passage, right? So this is a very generic way of saying that, if there is individual consciousness and people are willing to go to any lengths to achieve it. This was never mentioned in the passage. This just seems like a moral of the story if the story proceeded, right? So this again, spot rejection, spot elimination is possible for this. Option B, the image of perfectionism is reflected in and perpetuated by the media, and people do their best to adhere to this ideal. Adhere is to conform, to follow, all right? Adhere to these ideals. This is again a wrong choice. This choice does not capture the idea that the idea of perfectionism has evolved over the years, which was actually present in option number A. It rather captures a miniature, theme about the media, how it is perpetuated by the media, and people do their best to adhere to these ideals. This was just the 1950s, right? Remember, in this era, we were talking about non-conformism, which was mentioned in option A. So after looking at all these options, we can safely reject B, C, and D, and option A is the correct answer to this question. So I hope you've understood the question, you've understood how we scan through the passage, how we eliminate options, how we come up with the correct answer, and I hope you've had a great session. And thank you, and we'll see you later. Thank you.